Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America.
I love this timeline you lay out in one of your reports. It's titled, "Is Antarctica the Key to Flat Earth?" But you say, Admiral Richard Byrd led 4 expeditions to Antarctica, the 4th being Operation High Jump. In 1954, he spoke on TV of an area bigger than the U.S., never seen by human beings, and that within 180 miles beyond the South Pole, his team found enough coal in a mountain range not covered in snow to supply the whole world for quite a while. 1957, Byrd dies of a heart issue in his sleep at 68 years old. 1 year later, 1958, NASA was formed, directing attention away from Antarctica and instead up to the moon. 1959, a year later, the UN treaty outlawing public travel south of the 60th parallel was enacted. Then a few years later, 1962, high-altitude nuclear tests were conducted, and they were called Operation Fishbowl. And now there are trillions of dollars spent to explore space and Mars, but why not Antarctica? And I think that that last point is just really provocative, and that timeline really does kind of make the case that lower levels of the elite, lower levels, they're little minions, were trying to figure this out too. They've got these reports from Byrd. They know something's up, and maybe they even believed the lie because the Vatican came up with this stuff a long time before the 1950s and 60s. And so then they're like, okay, well, let's just make sure no one can go there. And then probably they're going to go there and explore things on their own under the radar. And then Operation Fishbowl, you're trying to blast through the top. Who knows if they cracked it or what the results of such a thing were. But it seems like they very much wanted to send all the attention upwards towards the moon and Mars. And then, of course, we got NASA and the fact that you've said the Chevron logo is in every space organization on the planet, which shows they are interlocked and connected. Maybe they're all perpetuating the same lies. It's very interesting. It's also kind of a Freemasonic symbol. It's kind of the compass. So, who runs these space agencies? What is their true agenda? And are they just trying to distract away from anyone realizing where we really are? Because that realization might send us on that soul school learning path. The whole idea that we're in an empty, meaningless universe really beats you down, makes you feel pretty insignificant, makes you feel like, yeah, I should just watch 8 seasons of The Masked Singer with my life, because who gives a fuck? But no, you wake up to some of these other things, these little clues, and you think, man, I am in a construct at the bottom of it, and I've got a lot of work to do on myself to move myself through this process and maybe reunite with the oneness at the other end of the Sephiroth Tower. I mean, this is a lot, but what do you think? It seems like you broadly agree.
Well, I definitely agree that the most important thing we can do is the individual. The thing you said at the very end there is to do the personal work, the shadow work, self-discovery, know thyself, and become fully anchored on that journey, the individual soul journey. But it's also fun to talk about all this other stuff too. Obviously, this is a perfect example of why it's important to be an agnostic, because when I first went down the Antarctica, the flat Earth rabbit hole, I came across all that stuff that you mentioned that I did in the report. And I put it together, connecting the dots that, okay, well, that's what Antarctica is they're hiding this closed system. And that must be what it was all about. But then I recently came across some other information. And if I didn't remain an agnostic, I probably would have ignored all this new information because I was like, well, that doesn't fit into my new belief system. And so therefore it must be a lie, and I'm not going to look at it. And luckily, thank God, I don't have that. I maintain an open mind because it's very interesting. And I think when you look at both of what you just laid out and what I'm about to describe, when you look at both of them, I think you're closer to the truth, factoring both of these stories in. There's still a lot of questions. But this is a video I'm working on right now, also for my subscribers on Substack. It's a part 2 to a series I'm doing on aliens. And while I knew a lot of this, the deeper I got into it, the more I was blown away by the details. And that is, in the 1920s, the Germans began forming their own secret society network to gain control over the worldwide secret societies. A lot of people point out how the German Nazis were very anti-Rothschild. Yes, that is true. But if you dig deep into it, they work with them. They wanted the upper hand, and they seem to have gotten that if you look at this timeline. In the 20s and 30s, they created their own societies, the Vril Society, some I can't pronounce unless I have it in front of me. And their main objective was to make contact with the Aryan race. The Aryan race was not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pure form of humans. They were non-humans that they believed lived in Atlantis. They believed that the Germanic people were descended of this non-human species. They wanted to make contact with them. Allegedly, they hired a bunch of psychics and intuitives, people that were, with all these gifts, and they recruited them into these societies to do this. Allegedly, they made contact in 1919 or 1920, and they got a schematics for a flying machine through one of these contacts written in a ancient German Templar script that they later translated and gave to some German engineers. And then right around the same time in the early 1920s, they formed a secret society based on space travel. Werner von Braun was a founding member of this secret society. The founding member, or the founder, claimed that they had help from other worlds with their information. They designed their first prototype, I believe, in the early 1930s on a flying disc. The very well-known Victor Schauberger was actually recruited by the Germans to help develop a implosion type of energy device for these flying machines. According to their contacts with these non-humans, they were driven to Antarctica in the 1930s, where they were told they would find this technology and they would find an entrance to Agartha, which is where the Freemasons believe that you talk about the Freemasons believing in this underworld. They call it Agartha. And right after they went there, they invaded Poland, which is an interesting part of the timeline. In 1942, Los Angeles was swarmed by UFOs. This is very well documented. They were shooting at them with no effect. And then it appears as if, according to this timeline, the Germans were able to get their hands on this technology, make contact with this species in the underworld, ally with them, and then it appears as if they realized that they'd be in a more beneficial way to fake losing the war and infiltrate other nations. When you look at Operation Paperclip, Werner von Braun and NASA, Werner von Braun, who was a founding member of this secret space society, this secret society that was based on space and communicating with these non-humans, it seems more like it wasn't like America was taking them in to learn their secrets. It seems more like Germany made a deal and said, look, you're going to take these guys. And in the final piece of all this was, the missions to Antarctica by Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd coming back, and the translation is often mistranslated. People say flying craft that can go to pole at some great speed. That's not actually what he said in Argentina or Chile. With Chile, the Chilean newspaper Admiral Byrd said that America needs to come up with a defense from an enemy that'll be coming from the poles. That's basically what he said, as if he saw some enemy there. The Germans were There was like 120 submarines that went missing that no one knows where they went. A couple submarines were captured off the coast of Brazil on their way to Antarctica. And in their debrief, they claimed that they were part of some operation to set up a base. There was a map recovered that had the secret entrance to Agartha through Antarctica, written in German. It goes on and on and on. But I think they both fit together because, like, for example, you mentioned Operation Fishbowl, which is a very interesting name for shooting nukes up into the air. And here's my big question. After that long rant, I'll leave it with my question in all this. Because, like I said at the beginning, it appears as if there's some truth to both of this. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. In 1952, Washington, D.C. was swarmed with UFOs. This is very well documented, 2 weeks in a row, where everyone on duty in air traffic control said they were metallic objects. There were fighter pilots dispatched, and it appears as if, when you put this all into perspective, that was the Germans showing that they had the upper hand. Like I said, in the 1920s, they set out to dominate the secret society network. And by 1952, they were showing off in Washington, D.C., being like, look what we got. You're going to have to let us run the show right now. And it seems like they've been running it ever since, at least in the West. And so my big question is, can we leave the firmament? Are we stuck in here, or is there a way out? It seems like Bigfoot can come and go.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right.